We'd like to thank the Nashville Sounds and First Horizon Park for hosting us this morning, and we look forward to hearing your report later in the meeting. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge the reappointments of Kim Atkins and Aaron Mcgee to the board. I'm sure I speak for everyone when I say that we appreciate your work and all that you do for the authority. Also, Kim has agreed to serve as chair of the Women's Sports Ad Hoc Committee, and I want to thank you for that. Appreciate it. Thank you. I also would like to introduce a new board member, Winston Justice. And Winston, I read your bio, and I'm going to share a little bit with the group because it's pretty exciting. He was appointed by Mayor Cooper and confirmed by the Metro Council on May 5th. Winston is an investment advisor and a VP at Alliance Bernstein. He also serves as an adjunct finance professor for the Lipscomb School of Business. Before his career in finance, he played in the NFL for a number of years with the Eagles, Colts, and Broncos. So I think he's going to be really helpful as we go along the conversations with the stadiums. He's played in a lot of them. Welcome, Winston, and we look forward to serving with you. Winston has also agreed to serve on our finance committee, so thank you for that. Mayor Cooper also appointed Michael Zira to the board. Unfortunately, Michael is traveling today and couldn't be here, so I will introduce him at our June meeting. I will be looking to make additional appointments to the Women's Ad Hoc Committee and Personnel Committee. If anyone is interested in serving, please let me know. And if I don't hear from anyone, I will let you know. Finally, I would like to acknowledge and welcome District 6 Council Member Brett Withers. We're glad to have you with us. Thank you for being here. At this time, we will have consideration of the minutes from the April 21st, 22 meeting, and you should have those minutes, should have been received. Does everyone have those minutes, and have you had an opportunity to review them?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion, corrections? If not, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers, nay. The motion passes. At this time, Monica will give us the executive director's report. Monica?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes. Well enough? Okay. Thank you for joining us today. You have the agenda before you. You'll see that we are going to have a Title IX spotlight. We are waiting for Candace Story Lee, the athletic director at Vanderbilt, is on her way and will be up here shortly. We'll have a finance committee report. Also, the Nashville Downtown Partnership will give an update, and the Sounds will present the First Horizon Park report. There will not be a Geodis Park or infrastructure report today, but Nashville SC will be back next month, hopefully with a report, maybe closing out the project. So we look forward to that. Are there any questions about the agenda? Well, I wanted to introduce you to Derek Moore, but Derek is downstairs waiting for Candace to come, so you might get a chance to meet him, hopefully. Derek approached us earlier this year about a possible internship while he was finishing up his master's in sports management at Belmont. We have not had an internship program, but it's something that we've talked about for years, and it's something that we think would, really be a benefit and a help to college students. I remember being in that same program at UT, and internships, obviously, we all know are really critical. So Derek spent some time with Quentin learning about the Sports Authority, training a little bit before he left, and he attended our February meeting at Bridgestone Arena, so some of you may have had a chance to meet him. He's coming in here now with Candace. So he'll be in the office a couple days a week over the next month. He'll be at the meeting in June, but I just wanted to make sure you all could put a name with a face. Finally, I wanted to give you an update on our Women's Professional Sports Initiative. We continue to work with our consultant, CAA Icon, who is putting the final touches on presentations that will go to both the WNBA and the NWSL. You'll remember back in March that the board voted to amend the contract with Icon to provide for some additional services. Part of this presentation will include letters of support from our facilities, the mayor's office, the NCVC, and some other members of our community, our Women's Sports Community Advisory Committee. There's a lot of excitement. I think there's a lot of buzz. Both leagues are really talking about expansion, and so as we continue down this road, we'll keep you informed. Are there any questions? If not, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Monica. I see our Title IX spotlight for this morning has entered the room, so welcome, Candace Story Lee. We're so glad to have you here. So at this time, we're going to have our Title IX spotlight, and Monica and Glenn, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, most of you know this, but I do want to say it for anyone who may be new to our meetings. The Sports Authority has been celebrating the upcoming 50th anniversary of Title IX with a Spotlight series. And so over the last 9 or 10 months, we've heard from a number of trailblazers, including Betty Wiseman, who founded the women's basketball program at Belmont. Last month, we heard from Betty Giles, who founded the tennis, women's basketball, and volleyball programs at UT Martin. Also, she recruited Pat Summit to UT Martin. And of course, we've also heard from our very own Kathy Bender. And so while today's honoree has definitely reaped the benefits of those that have come before her, she is without questions blazing her own trail. And we're excited to honor Candace Story Lee this morning, Vice Chancellor of Athletics and University Affairs and Athletic Director at Vanderbilt. Glenn Farner is going to read today's resolution, and then there will be a short video, as we usually do, followed by an interview with Candace and Sports Authority member Aaron Mcgee.
Thank you, Monica. Whereas the Sports Authority of the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County is participating in a year-long celebration of the 50th anniversary of Title IX, which will occur on June 23rd, 2022, and desires to recognize Nashvillians who have made not only significant and long-lasting impacts as athletes, but have also opened doors, removed barriers, and encouraged participation in sports for girls and women. And whereas Madison, Alabama native Candace Story Lee served as a team captain, 4-year letter winner, 5-time SEC Academic Honor Roll selection, and led her team to an SEC tournament championship in 2002 while a member of the Vanderbilt women's basketball team. And whereas Lee served as the Vanderbilt Athletics Director, Athletics Department as Senior Woman Administrator from 2004 to 2020, and 2016 became Deputy Athletic Director under David Williams, overseeing the day-to-day operations for the department. And whereas Lee was named to the Adidas Next Up class of 2018, the Sports Business Journal's Power Players College Sports in 2019, and a 2019-2020 Fellow of the Tennessee Independent Colleges and Universities Association's Pressel Executive Leadership Institute. And whereas Lee has served on the NCAA Women's Basketball Rules Committee, the NCAA Division I Women's Lacrosse Committee, and is a former chair of the SEC Senior Woman Administrators. And whereas Lee was named Vanderbilt's Vice Chancellor of Athletics and University Affairs and Athletics Director in May 2020, is Vanderbilt's first female athletics director and the first Black woman to head an SEC athletics program. Whereas Lee serves on the SEC Executive Committee, the YWCA of Middle Tennessee Board of Directors, the Tennessee Sports Hall of Fame Board of Directors, the Nashville Sports Council Board of Directors, the Black Athletic Directors Alliance Executive Committee, was named the 2021 Peabody College Distinguished Alumna, and a member of the 2022 class of the Huntsville-Madison County, Alabama Athletic Hall of Fame. Be it therefore resolved that the Sports Authority of the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County, as part of its celebration of the 50th anniversary of Title IX, honors and recognizes Candace Story Lee for her contributions to the women's sports at the local, state, and national levels.
So Candace, we're going to invite you to the front. And we'll let her take her seat. Just have a seat. Right here. Candace.
This season, the Vanderbilt Commodores will soar into the history books with a woman leading the athletic department for the first time in the SEC.
As News Channel 5's Kelsey Gibbs found out, her story began on the hardwood.
Candace Lee, Interim Vice Chancellor for University Affairs and Athletics and Interim Athletics Director.
A long title.
I made my way up here at 17 and stayed.
And a long time coming.
It's a mouthful, but what an honor. I'm very humbled. I'm very excited. I'm very grateful.
This year, Candace Story Lee became the first female and woman of color to head an SEC athletics department.
There are a lot of people out there who are prepared to lead. They just need the opportunity to do so.
It's been nearly 20 years when she first donned number 50 as a powerhouse basketball player here at Vanderbilt University.
So I arrived fresh out of high school in August of '96.
During that time, she became captain and a 4-year letter winner with the Commodores.
So to have been a student athlete and to now be part of the group that is serving student athletes, I certainly hope that that works to my benefit.
Now, instead of crashing the glass, she's breaking through it. For other women, other athletes, writing their own story.
I just want to lead and show people that this is possible. And there are a number of people out there ready to take on this challenge.
And with decades of experience on and off the court, she's ready to call the shots.
Right now, I'm focused on the business at hand.
Kelsey Gibbs, News Channel 5.
You are a very accomplished woman. Thank you. What's the guiding force? What's the motivation behind this hard work, commitment, and dedication?
I would say a couple of things. Well, first, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here. And I have to tell you that my dear assistant and friend, and I hate to just say assistant because she's so much more, but her name is Angela Bess, and she said, look, you got to go. Kathy needs you to do this thing. And I talked to Kathy on the phone, and she's like, I just need you to be here on this day. I'm like, cool. And I really didn't know what I was walking into, so this is phenomenal. Thank you. But I think we all know that if Kathy asks you to do something, you do it. You don't really ask a lot of questions. Well, Kathy, thank you so much, and thanks to everyone. What an honor. I'm so happy to be here. So now to your questions. I would say twofold. So first, my faith is very important to me, and so as a person of faith, I do feel very mission-driven to just fulfill my purpose, right? I'm not always clear on what that is, but I always just do what I feel led to do. And I'm just very blessed to have a wonderful family. I come from a military background with a father who was very mission-driven and a mother who made sure our family was always taken care of. And when you are a person of color, I think that at times you're reminded that sometimes spaces were not made for you, so you have to have the courage to break through those constraints. I always saw my parents do that, and that motivates me.
That's awesome. So what drew you to Vanderbilt?
Well, I didn't want to, so my dad was in the military and we moved all the time. So I think, a lot. And so I didn't want to go too far from home because it felt like my parents would probably retire in Alabama and that was going to kind of be their forever home. And after moving a lot, that was really important. So they started to put down roots there and I didn't want to go too far. So that was one thing. And I thought I might stay within like a 4 or 5 hour radius. But then came to Vanderbilt on an official visit and just was actually a camp. I guess the first time was a camp. And I loved everything about it. I loved the city. I understood the power of the degree. The team was a couple years removed from a Final Four, so I knew I could play basketball at the highest level, and it just felt like home. So I, again, just sort of went with my gut, and it told me that it was Vanderbilt.
That's awesome. So you've heard that we've had Kathy Bender and Teresa Phillips in this seat as well. And so we've heard a few stories about the Vanderbilt experience, but would you share with us what was it like your time being an athlete? What was it, 4-year letter? It's a lot of companies. I'm trying to remember, right. But coming on, being team captain freshman year, what was that experience like And if you can anchor this response to kind of like in leadership, because I think that's what I really extracted from that clip.
You know, I'm thankful that you all had the opportunity to hear from Kathy and Teresa and Betty and so many other women who have pioneered. I had a pretty good experience at Vanderbilt. It wasn't perfect, but I know that my experience very much was influenced by what Kathy went through, what Teresa went through. You know, I'm very clear on the fact that people came before me that then allow you to move into your space, and I hope that I can do the same for people that will come behind me. I had a pretty good experience. I always felt, I've talked publicly about this, that Vanderbilt is a wonderful community. It's warm. I mean, I wouldn't be there if I didn't feel at home, but even despite having been there for many, many years, you know, it is a space that, again, when you are a woman of color, there were some moments that I experienced, even in the place that I've called home for many, many years, that were very challenging. And I think in part of the reason why I've stayed as long as I have is because I hope that other people don't have to go through that experience. But I'm really clear that Kathy went through something far greater than what I've gone through. Right? So when you tie it to leadership, I do think that leadership is about having an impact. It's about serving others. It's about trying to make the space better when you leave it. And so I inherited a great space, you know, from David Williams and the Kathy Benders of the world and the people who came before me, and I only hope to do that now.
That's awesome. We're going to get into your experience with Peabody here in a second,
Sure.
but since you invoked his name, David Williams, curious to know what's one of the most valuable lessons that you learned from David Williams?
I learned so many, it would be hard to pick one, but I would say,
Top three.
top three, how much time do we have? You know, I would say that, I mean, David was a tremendous leader in so many ways, and he became more than just a boss to me, and he was my mentor. He was really like family to me. And I learned a lot about family from him. So he was very busy. He served on, I mean, y'all were all on boards with him at some point, and, you know, he was also very dedicated to his children and to his wife, and so everybody was in a bunch of activities, so he was always doing something. And we would laugh because we might be in the middle of a very intense conversation, right, about like, what are we gonna do about this coach, or what are we gonna do about that? And if his phone rang and it was his son, he might be, I'm not gonna say hollering and screaming, I'm gonna say spirited, having a spirited conversation, and his phone might ring and it was Nick, his son, and he would, no matter what, he would answer the phone. And his voice would change and his demeanor would change. And I always knew who he was talking to, right? This must be Gail or Nick or Sam or Erica or David, right? That's his wife and his children. And what I learned, even when I would be frustrated sometimes, like, get off the phone and I'm trying to get, you know, such and such done. You know how we are. Sometimes we get busy. What I learned in that, though, is he always made time for what was important to him. And nothing's more important than your family. And I mean, we would be dealing with some high stakes issues sometime, and he would stop. And sometimes that conversation was nothing more than, yeah, I'll pick up pizza later. We can have pizza. We can. And you laugh, but those are the moments, right, that we create memories from. And you know, when he tragically and suddenly passed away, those are the moments that you remember, how he made time for his family. And so I certainly try to always make sure that I'm doing the same, but I learned that from him, and I don't even know if he probably did know he was teaching me that, but that's certainly one example.
Yeah, that's beautiful. You know, leadership is modeled.
That's right.
And thank you for your model of leadership. So you clearly have an affinity for Vanderbilt and Peabody, Dr. Candace Story Lee. You have your bachelor's, your master's, and your doctoral degree from Peabody. How does that academic experience inform you as an administrator in this balance of student-athlete from your perspective as a student, and now that you're in this other role, responsible for creating an environment for young people to thrive in?
You know, one of the things that drew me to Peabody and / Vanderbilt is, you know, the sense of community was very strong. when you're, and I liken this to being on a team, when you're part of a strong community or you're part of a strong team, they will affirm you, but they will also challenge you. And so there is this sweet balance that you can strike, right? And it takes some humility to be in the classroom and be among the best and the brightest. And you have to, you hope you're one of those people, but you don't always feel like it, right? The imposter syndrome is very real. And same with being a student athlete. I mean, I came from Alabama. We didn't win nothing in my high school, but I got here and everybody was so accomplished and everybody had won state championships and everybody was so fit and and it was just, I chose Vanderbilt and Peabody because I knew it would challenge me and make me uncomfortable, and I knew that I needed that. And it's also why I choose it every day. And so Peabody gave me some warmth and empathy and love, but it also really pushed me out of my comfort zone. And, I would say several years later, right, you try to find the peace in the discomfort. I talk a lot about that with our staff and our student athletes. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help people be the best version of themselves and grow. It's very hard. It takes courage to truly grow, right? Because you have to be able to look yourself in the mirror and love yourself enough to know that you're worth it, but yet be humble enough to know that you have a lot of work to do. And I learned that at Peabody. I learned it at every stage, in every program. I also learned that on the basketball court. And hopefully that translates into how I conduct myself today.
Yeah, so you have the responsibility of managing some nuances in your role, the responsibility of your role, but there's also this other piece with you being the first and the first. And what does that mean to you? How do you walk in that on a daily basis as Vice Chancellor, first female AD at Vanderbilt University? Can you speak to the responsibility of that, and how do you manage that in this environment?
It feels like a huge responsibility because, I also want, I talked a little bit about, side note, I've never seen that clip before, so that kind of made me laugh, but I know I talked a little bit on that clip about wanting to show people what was possible. The reality is that I feel so fortunate to be in the role that I'm in, but I know that if it wasn't me, it could be so many other people, because there are a lot of people who are women, or who are women of color, or who are men of color, or who are not men of color, but there are so many people, just period, that could do the job. And I do feel like I want people to see, I appreciate being referred to as a first. I wouldn't say I'm comfortable with it, but I do understand that's just a fact. And David and I would talk a lot about this, because David thought I could be a first long before I thought I could be a first. And he would say, and the key is if and when, wherever that happens, it only matters if there's a second and a third and a fourth and a fifth. And so it feels like a big responsibility to show that you can look like me and be equipped to occupy this role and be effective in the role. And so you hope it creates other opportunities for other people. But it's, I feel like at times, whether it's perceived or not, I feel like my margin for error is smaller. But I've had this conversation some with our Chancellor, Daniel Dearmeyer, who's the one who hired me, and he said, I think there's a lot of eyes on you. And he told me this during the interview process. So this is going to be different. People are going to talk all the time about how you look and what you're going to hear this a lot. So you got to learn to embrace that. But he said, the thing is, I know you are looking at it from the perspective of having the smaller margin of error. I'm looking at it as, but because of who you are, you're positioned to have a greater impact. And so how can you marry those two together? And it really changed my perspective. Because I think I had a bit of a limiting perspective. Not that I didn't think I could do the job, because I did. And I think I earned the job. And I say that with all full humility. I wasn't sure if other people were ready for me to do the job, and started to internalize that. And now I don't do that anymore. It's hard. And, there are moments that happen all the time where, again, you realize you're operating in a space that wasn't necessarily created for you. But how do you still find comfort and confidence in the space? And that's my challenge every day, while I'm also trying to be a really good athletic director. Not just a woman who gets it, but I want to be really good at my job, because that's what our university deserves. That's what our young people deserve. That's what our alumni deserve.
Absolutely. You know, we denounce imposter syndrome on a daily basis, so you're right where you're supposed to be. So let's land this plane here. We got just 2 more questions.
Sure.
Let me ask the ceremonial question that is really what we all really want to know, and that is, what does Title IX mean to you?
So I love that. Of course, I've been in a number of things where we're celebrating the 50th anniversary. Excuse me. And I appreciate that, and of course I celebrate it. But it is also, it's sort of like 2 sides of a coin, because on one hand, I think it's important for us to acknowledge how much opportunity has been provided and how many more women have participation opportunities or coaching opportunities or leadership opportunities. But it's also a reminder that we have so far to go. You know, so like when I think about myself in the SEC, we do now have 2 women who are athletic directors in the SEC, Desiree Reed-Francois. That's a big, big deal, you know, but we only have 2. You know, if you're making history in 2020 and you're not named COVID, then that's like, did y'all think that was funny a little bit? Okay. Did you catch it? Did you pick up what I put down there? Yeah. But I mean, you know, it's kind of sad in some ways that you would be making history, which means that we still have a long way to go. But I mean, I'm proud of the progress that's been made, but I hope that it just turns the pressure on for us so that we work really, really hard. The other thing is, and I feel like it's important to say this, people say Title IX and it's like everybody looks to the women. I would say to the men in the room, like, Title IX should be it's an opportunity for all of us to embrace the fact that there need to be more opportunities for everybody. And it's like anything else, if women are going to have the opportunities that they deserve, men have to decide it's important. Because men are in charge of a lot of stuff. It's like, and you know, that's just, I mean, David Williams was the biggest Title IX proponent that I've known my entire life. And he's obviously a man who thought it was really important to create opportunities. And so it does have to be something that we all embrace. It's like diversity can't just be something that people of color think it's important, or else it's not going to change.
I love it. Tell us what's fun about this job. You have a huge weight on your shoulder. Listen, we're all professionals in the room. We know the importance of showing up, doing your best, and doing it in excellence. What's fun about the work?
You know, I love sports.
Yeah.
So I get to watch a lot of it. But I love competition. But I love, like, within sports, the things that you can pick up. Like, you get to see people show up and be things they never thought they could be. Or you get to see the kid that comes out and they overcome this great, you know, this awful injury, and they never thought they'd play again. And then you get to see them at bat. Or you get to see them hit a layup. Or you get, I love sports. And I love what sports stands for. And so that's been a lot of fun. And also I get to meet some amazing people. It's crazy because, like, I was at the baseball game the other day looking for a hot dog. Apparently we had run out. I'm like, somebody needs to tell somebody. That was me. I was like, we're out of hot dogs. So I'm walking around, I'm looking for a hot dog, and there's a woman who's sort of patiently waiting. I could tell she's for a while, I wasn't used to people waiting to speak to me. I just walk right past people, and I'm like, they're like, oh no, we were waiting to talk to you. And, you know, that was so humbling to me because I was like, really? I just, you don't always see yourself, right, the way other people see you. So I've gotten a little better at that. I'm trying to pay attention. And there's a woman who's standing with a little girl, and she's itty bitty. Now, I'm 6'3", so I think everybody's itty bitty, but she's like small. This little baby is small. She's got on all this Vanderbilt stuff and these cute little pigtails, and she's just waiting. And I look and I say, well, how are you? And she's talking real soft. I really can't hear her. And her mom says, well, she has some pretty severe respiratory issues. She was born that way. She can't talk very loud, but she just wanted to tell you this is her first game. And I said, oh, it's her first game. And so I got terrible knees, but I'm trying to bend down, talk to this sweet baby. And her mom goes on to explain that this is really her first outing in her whole life. She's 4. Because she was born at 25 weeks and spent like the first 2 years in the hospital, and then COVID happened, and she said, I was hoping she'd get into baseball, but she just really cares about slushies. So she's really excited about the slushie stand. But that made me so emotional because this baby's first time being out in the world outside of a hospital. So she goes to the hospital quite a bit. She had just gone into respiratory distress a couple weeks before and was in an ambulance. And this baby's first outing was a Vanderbilt baseball game. You know, and her mom wanted to make sure that I met her. I cry all the time with stuff like that. So if I keep talking, I'll start crying. This baby was so sweet. And I thought, how awesome is this? That I get to be a part of something where people in their lives, they think it is that significant. You know, that's awesome. So even on the days that are hard, you know, we're not curing cancer. We're playing sports and we're taking care of other people's children, which is a huge privilege. Things like that just remind me to keep it in perspective.
Awesome. Dr. Candace Story Lee, thank you for your time.
Thank you
for your
Thank
service.
you so
Absolutely, we appreciate you.
So as Candace makes her way around the room, I'd just like to say that, as you can see, she was not only a great basketball player, but she was pretty smart. She walked away with 3 degrees. And, you know, as a former Lady Door, I'm honored to have her here with us today. And Candace continues to pave the way and be a trailblazer for many that will come behind her. I'm a pioneer, but she is certainly paving that way, and just really excited about what's going on at Vanderbilt University under her leadership. And I am actually also very proud to serve as co-chair of Vanderbilt's first Black and Gold Club. We've never had an alumni club for athletes, and we have that now, and we got it during COVID, so I'm excited about that. So there's a lot of new things going on under Candace's leadership. So very excited to have her here. And once again, thank you, Candace. I know you're very busy. Thank you. Okay, moving on with our agenda. We'll now have our Finance Committee report, and Frank Harrison, who has agreed to be our new Finance Committee Chair, is going to give us that report. Thank you for that, Frank.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Can you hear me? Yes. Good. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the appointment as the chair of the Finance Committee. I had my first meeting this morning, and we mainly focused on the Nissan Stadium. We were happy to have Shannon Meyer from the Titans, who provided updates on several projects that are underway for the stadium, and some that have also been completed since our last meeting. Shannon introduced Chad Moore, CPA of Ernest and Young Partners, to present their report on the Titans' user fees. He provided a summary of the findings from the report and was able to answer a lot of questions. Also, we were happy to have President and Chief Executive of the Titans, Bert Nehill. He provided an update of the current lease agreement with the stadium. We had a lot of questions with that as well. They both have agreed to stay here for a little while and give us a briefing on what was discussed this morning and answer some questions possibly. First, we'll start with Shannon Meyer.
Thank you. I have to follow Dr. Candace Lee. That was much more inspirational than what I'm going to be talking about. But I just, in the Finance Committee meeting, gave a brief update of our current account receivable with Sports Authority. The previous meeting, it was about $27.3 million. It has now increased to $28.7 million. So during the Finance Committee, we covered what those changes were for our completed and current projects, and also gave a brief update of some anticipated projects that we have on the docket for this upcoming off season, the largest of which is a new point of sale system to upgrade our technology and some other additional updates in our stadium and our clubs. I gave that presentation, and then the other report that was done was a report on our user fee, which is the $3 ticket tax that's imposed on the Titans games and non-Titans events. For the Titans this season, we had about $2.2 million of ticket tax that we remitted to the Sports Authority for those Titans games. And for the non-Titans events, it was about $1.8 million. So around $4 million in total was remitted for that $3 ticket tax for events held in Nissan Stadium this year. So those were the two updates that I provided, and I'll turn it over to Burke for a quick summary of the updates he provided.
Thank you.
Still good morning. Burke Nihil, President and CEO of the Tennessee Titans and Nissan Stadium. So this morning, I presented in response to a request last March by the Finance Committee to help to quantify the Sports Authority's obligation under the current lease. And so we did that by going back to one of the two contractors who had provided an estimate for us on a renovation concept last January. Went to Turner Construction to do that work. Turner hired a second contractor, AECOM Hunt, as a peer review to be sure that the work that they were providing had been vetted and was reliable through these two contractors. So what I presented was the current state of things to be able to bring bring the building into first-class condition under our lease. And then I went on to explain through Turner's numbers what it would mean to take a renovated building as of 2026, which is about how long it would take to bring the building up to first-class condition, through the remainder of the lease, which runs through 2039. A couple other points. I went through the lease terms because it's impossible for the Sports Authority to fully understand why the obligation is what it is without understanding what the lease says. And what the lease says is that the Sports Authority is responsible to fund capital project expenses to keep the building in first-class condition and keep pace with a defined term, comparable facilities. There are some exceptions to that. I explained the exceptions. Luxury suites, for example, Titan-specific areas like our locker room and our team offices. And then lastly, items that still have remaining useful life. For example, our Jumbotrons, if we were to replace them, they've got a 10-year useful life, and we replace them at year 8, we'd split the cost based on the remainder of the useful life. Then I went through the definition of comparable facilities, because that is ultimately what the lease looks to define first-class condition. Comparable facilities means any stadium similar to ours that's built 10 years before or 10 years after Nissan Stadium. So that's 1989 through 2009, given that our building was built in 1999. I went through some examples of buildings that have limited renovations as of now, to moderate renovations, to major renovations. There were 2 buildings that have actually been vacated. They were listed as comparable facilities, the baseball park in Atlanta and the baseball park in Arlington. I mentioned them, and then pointed out a couple other technical comparable facilities based on a lease definition, the stadium in Arizona, as well as the stadium in Dallas. Went on to quantify what all of that means. So as of today, we have, through the Turner work, the budget for bringing the building into first-class condition is $1.2 billion. We had Turner break that apart, however, to take out those areas that the Titans would be responsible for. So the luxury suites, the Titan-specific areas and the like. So the number for the Sports Authority obligation comes in at $918 million. I'm sorry, going back a step, I also mentioned, as Shannon just covered, the current account receivable of $28 million. So that brings the current near-term obligation of the Sports Authority per this quantification with Turner to $945 million. Went on to share what Turner's estimates are to bring the building, to keep the building in first-class condition through the end of the lease term, 2026 through 2039. That number was $894 million. To be clear, the work that they did was only keeping the building updated and maintained to a reasonable standard, tracking useful life of the things that would be upgraded as of 2026. It does not, kind of quote unquote, go on offense to maintain NFL or facility standards, because there's no way to predict what a building is going to look like and the technology and that sort of thing in 2032, for example. So just keeping the building updated after it was renovated for the remaining 13 years would be $894 million. So that brings the total of the Sports Authority's obligation, the estimate to quantify through 2039, which is the expiration of the term if we extend our option, to $1.8 billion. I ended on something of a higher note by showing the progress we've made to date. Frankly, we didn't expect the number to be quite this big when we asked Turner to quantify, but we knew that it was going to be large. This has been something that has been, weighing on us. This is why we've been pursuing a sustainable long-term plan with such a sense of urgency. So the work that we've been doing over the last 2 or 3 years to find sources that can ultimately help pursue an objective of taking the general taxpayer out of that risk position and put the Titans in that position while using sources outside of Nashville's general fund. So I mentioned the private commitment to date. We're still working on it. This commitment could grow, but as of today, we've got $700 million or so allocated from a private investment. It's the team, that's the NFL. We're even talking to vendors about bringing capital to the project to offset the initial construction costs. Also talked about state work that's been done. Up until now, the state has been very supportive of a stadium project, and we appreciate that. They have allocated $500 million, conditioned on there being a roof on a new building. They have enabled Metro to add a 1% hotel occupancy tax that also would be conditioned on supporting a building with a roof. And then they've also, last year, they allocated the in-stadium sales tax, that the state's portion of that, as well as 50% of sales tax that would be generated from what is now asphalt parking lots. If that becomes a development, the state has committed 50% of their state sales tax to a stadium solution. So still work to do. You can add up those numbers and doesn't get all the way to the finish line of a new building, which from a question from Mr. Justice, a new building is likely to cost somewhere between 1.9 and 2.2 billion. We're still doing the work on defining that budget. You can add up the sources and it doesn't add up to cover the last nickel on that. But we are hard at work identifying all the sources that are available and to find a way to make this pencil and to ultimately take the taxpayer out of this $1.8 billion liability under the current lease.
Great recap.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, yes, question. First, I have several questions that may not be relevant or you guys may not have considered in the process. But looking at the, and let me say this, let me preface what I'm going to say by telling you a story that my mother told me and my siblings when we were growing up. She lived in a rural area in South Alabama. And there was an elderly man who lived in a community who would do odd things. And one particular time, he was standing at the apex of a hill next to the train track, and a loaded train was climbing that hill, and he was frantically waving his hands to stop the train. And the train stopped, and the engineer asked the old man, said, "What's wrong? Is there trouble ahead?" And he said, no, I just wanted to know if you wanted to buy a big old fat possum. And the engineer said, you expletive so-and-so, you stopped a expletive loaded train climbing a hill to sell a possum. And the old man said, don't go getting upset. I haven't caught him yet. I just want to get him engaged. So what I want to do now is to ask you if in this whole process, you guys thought about maybe the Titans organization financing the facility. There are 3 facilities in this country. One in California, one in New York, New Jersey. Both have 2 NFL teams. But taxpayers did not bear the cost on that. And there's another one with only 1 team, and I'm not certain where that team is. And I'm just wondering where the taxpayer will land with this. I know you're saying you're taking it out, putting in a motel fees or taxes. And I'm thinking that will come from visiting fans. I'm just saying, these are people who will be coming to Nashville to games. Are the demographics such that you can generate the funds from motel taxes with people coming to games for the Titans? Or is this something that, will that be something that will be beneficial? Will it be substantial? And if, I just want to know what the taxpayer's responsibility is.
Yeah, very fair. First of all, let me say, I think for the last 2 or 3 years, even beyond that, I think we've been trying to jump in front of a train and not to sell a possum, but understanding that this lease is a problem for the taxpayers, considering the condition of the building. And today what we did was we're responding to a question from the Finance Committee, a very fair question to quantify what that liability is. We frankly, we just knew it was big. We knew it was a problem. We had never quantified it ourselves, but it's obviously a big number. And the goal of this objective has been to find a way to rip up this lease and to make sure that the taxpayer is no longer in that position. We have worked very hard for several years to find as many sources as possible that, to your point, hotel occupancy tax. I'm very grateful that the hospitality industry, the NCVC, the Hospitality Association has been supportive of that, understanding what a new building, especially one with a roof, would mean for their businesses. We have worked with the state on in-stadium sales tax. So that's people who are coming to the game, buying a ticket, buying a hot dog, buying a shirt, taking the sales tax that would be generated from those transactions and applying those to a stadium solution. We've looked at the campus, and there's still a lot of work to do to determine, what a development would look like, when a development would come online. But today, that's dormant asphalt, and it's not generating any revenue. And to look for opportunities to create revenue from that dormant asphalt and to help that be part of the solution as well. The city's been a great partner in trying to find these solutions, and the goal of Mayor Cooper's administration, and it's been the goal of the Titans too, is to find a solution to fund initial construction and maintain the building. So we're not in this position again without using Nashville's general fund, which today, that $1.8 billion, unfortunately, is exposed to the general fund. So we are working on a solution to both initially construct the building as well as keep it maintained without Nashville's general fund.
No taxpayer funding.
Well, I don't want to dance on the pinhead of a needle here and not give you, full transparency. I mean, sales tax is taxpayer money, right? But it's a solution that, as I understand the mayor's objective, is one that ultimately has no risk of raising a Nashville taxpayer's property taxes or having to do a citywide sales tax raise, because there's money that is allocated to a stadium, whether for initial construction or future maintenance, that needs to be funded because there's a gap and there's risk that's going to fall on the taxpayer. Is there public contribution through those sales taxes, through hotel tax? Yes, that's part of the plan. But the idea has been to spare the general Nashville taxpayer from property taxes, sales taxes. So again, I'm answering your question very technically. I just don't want to be anything less than transparent.
Yes.
Just to clarify, when you're talking about the taxes, using the word taxes, you're referring to the users of the facility that would bear and choose to buy a hotel room and or go to a game that would bear the cost
Yes.
in your proposed plan, is that
Yes.
correct?
Users of hotels, users of the stadium, users of the campus facilities that would be built. Those are the funds that would be in play here, not the general fund of the Metropolitan Nashville. Yes.
Thank you. Additional questions?
I do, but I'll wait.
You sure?
In considering demographics, game day for Titans, people come from miles around.
Yes.
How many would be expected to spend the night in Nashville at a hotel that would generate income?
Well, let me answer the question starting here. Thankfully, the Buffalo Bills are not coming to Nashville again this year. They've come 3 years in a row, and they've bought a lot of hotel rooms. Their fans have. I think it's really important to look at this also beyond Titans, because the Titans have a limited number of home games every year. But the estimate of a new facility, one with an enclosure, is that approximately 28 events, I mean ticketed events, would happen in a new facility. That doesn't include things like conventions that could happen on the floor and other events that could happen at the facility. Many of those are more likely to be out-of-town guests, and full of them based on our data. So, CMA Fest, for example, and concerts and international soccer games, those sorts of things draw lots of out-of-town visitors. And so plenty is the answer. And, just to be clear too, this is the sort of facility, if it were to have an enclosure in a city like Nashville, after seeing events like the NHL draft, like the NFL draft in 2019, that the expectation would be that the world's biggest and best events would pretty regularly choose Nashville to host those sorts of events, which are massive influxes of tourists.
One last thing, and I don't know that it's necessarily possible to do it, but as supporters of Nashville, and I know Nashvillians are very supportive of the sports teams here, very loyal, and they like to see these teams stay and do very well, be very successful. In your efforts, is there any way that you could be creative in generating some assistance to help the educational system in Nashville, transportation system in Nashville, the police department in Nashville? Just a question.
It's a fair one. Adolfo Birch, who I know you know, we hired Adolfo about 2 years ago. He's a native Nashvilleian. His father is relatively famous in this city. Adolfo went off to the NFL League office for about 25 years, and we brought him back to do a number of different things. But the thing that he has done more than anything over those 2 years is he's been connecting with the community and trying to understand how the Titans can have more of an impact. We're very, very proud of the impact that we've had in this community and around Tennessee during our time here since the 90s. But we believe that we can do even more. We can do even better work if we have a systematic approach to how we're serving our community. And so we've been listening to the community. Adolfo's been doing the heavy work. The way that I've looked at it is this. Bud Adams chose Nashville from a number of other attractive places where he could have put the team in the 90s because he felt a kinship with Nashville and with Tennessee. This is our opportunity, and leave the building aside. This is just, we're kind of having a moment under Amy Adams Strunk's leadership of reestablishing who we are as a football team, as a community servant, and we're ready to renew our vows. We love Nashville more than ever, and so we are ready to, make a bigger dent in serving this community and making a difference, house by house, block by block, community by community. And so absolutely, we'll be excited to share some of those plans as they continue to materialize. We are a football team. Objective number one is to win a Super Bowl, but increasingly, this win, serve, entertain mission that we live by drives the decisions that we make and the things that we do. And we see just this reestablishment of ourselves here in Nashville as an opportunity to do even bigger and better things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam
Thank you
Chair,
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes my report.
Great. Thank you, Frank. Thank you. Great report. Thank you very much. Okay, next on our agenda is the Nashville Downtown Partnership update. And for our new members of the authority, we have an agreement with the partnership that provides for the use of Sports Authority controlled parking lots free of charge to run a downtown shuttle service. So Russell Payne.
Yes, ma'am.
VP
Good morning.
and Chief
Good morning,
Operating
everyone.
Officer of the Downtown Membership Partnership.
Downtown Partnership. Thank you for having me this morning. I think you have the PowerPoint in your packet. I believe it's going to be on the screen. If we can get on the front screens, that'd be wonderful. But nonetheless, I'll just walk you through. This is really just an overview, since there's so many new members on this committee, of what this program entailed, what type of impact it's had on Nashville, and then kind of a look really at a pre and post-COVID program. First of all, if you look at your first sheet, you can see that this daytime shuttle was really designed to take the stress off of parking in the downtown area. Rates were rising. There were buildings that were underparked that needed places for larger new clients to go to. So this program really became very pivotal in helping meet those needs and allowing Nashville to grow economically. This year, we have been running for 20 years. Prior to COVID, we had 7 routes, 31 shuttles, and about 4,400 users. That was literally almost parking a Titans event. It was close to parking a Titans event every day, at least on the asphalt. So that was quite an undertaking, but we had that down pat. I wanted to move on to the overview of the program. We operated, and you also should have in your packet the map that shows the areas that we operated from, which was quite a few. We operated from Nissan Stadium from lots A, B, D, F, R, and T. And then there was also a option for free parking at Lot E, so you could get a pass, you could walk to work from Lot E. That was a very positive thing. We had numerous, well over 400 parking passes that people chose to walk to work every day. Now, they always didn't park on the same day, but nonetheless, it's just like regular parking. If you have 1,000 spaces, some people don't show up, you can do some oversell, so that's what we employed there. Our responsibility was for delivering, and still is, to deliver maintenance that is from, or trash pickup from the use of the lots. That doesn't include all events, but anything that's generated from our use, we are on the hook to maintain that. We also did the management and provided safety. At our peak, I think we had 4 full-time security personnel out within that area, so very good coverage. And if you look at it, it really did activate a valuable community asset, really, that Monday through Friday just kind of sat there waiting for an event to occur. And the next page I will take you to really talks to the impact of the program itself. If you'll see in the first section, talks about trips per year. 19 was our best year. We almost had 2 million trips, and that is a pretty large number. We were running 30 shuttles full tilt around the clock, not around the clock, but probably till about 8:30 at night. Had about 2 million trips. 2020, obviously, we had an impact. we had about 750,000. And interestingly enough, each one of these shuttles we calculated removes about 153 cars from the internal loop downtown, so helping solving traffic. People can get to the interstate a lot easier than they can get out of a garage and get to the interstate. So that was also very helpful. The other piece you see here talked about helping fuel growth pre-COVID. Each one of these companies that are listed in here, Phillips Service, Warner House, and some of the other ones, this program was a silver bullet in allowing these companies to come to town, really, because they were just going into underparked facilities. And so this was a silver bullet that allowed these things to occur. So very large economic impact for Nashville. A couple of the other points I'd like to talk about is that if you see in your packet, 69% of the users were Nashvillians. So you also go ahead and look at how much people were saving on a yearly basis. I think the calculation was they saved about $1,800 a year. Now that money comes back into Nashville, Davidson County for all of those people, so that was very positive. We also increased the value of underparked buildings that ended up generating about 6.3 million more tax dollars for Metro. So the economic impact cannot be understated. I also wanted to say that speaking to the leverage of the asset that just sat there Monday through Friday, these are a little bit older numbers. They're more probably $40,000 now. But if you looked at $30,000 per space at that 4,400 spaces, the city was allowed to leverage that to the tune of about $132 million a year. That is what it would cost the city or any other entity to build those parking decks to backfill the need for those parking spaces. And parking decks are very hard to build nowadays, which is why you don't see a lot of them going up. So a very efficient use of that program. Moving on to our next slide. We also began offering with Bridgestone, in conjunction with Bridgestone Arena, BEEP, which is best ever event parking. I can't take credit for that, but it kind of stuck. We started offering that out of the Bridgestone Arena area. We started in Lot R. We migrated to Lot D as it grew and other events took place. Offers a $3 round trip for each patron to and from Bridgestone Arena. Drops off really darn near right at their front door on 5th and Demonbreun there. Dedrick, I believe it is. It was Demonbreun. We did suspend that service in 2020 due to COVID, but it was most recently reactivated to allow us to offer free rides to ticket holders for Nashville Predators games. That was kind of a, hey, welcome back, let's get everything started up. And so we really appreciate the partnership with the Predators there. A couple of the milestones we had was in 18, we had a record year, 141 events serviced. 19 also marked the year that we went over 1,000 events that we had serviced. And of those 1,000 events, or about 1,100, we served over 250,000 passengers, 250,000 folks that did not pay parking downtown that could either rode these were riders specifically on the shuttle, whereas you can add about another 75% to that number of people that just chose to walk across the pedestrian bridge. So very, very popular. We also serviced the vendors and the employees of Bridgestone Arena as well. Next slide. This was really just kind of a great photograph from my perspective of how we really helped leverage and participate in large special events. You can see this was a Preds watch party. As I mentioned, we have given service for Bridgestone Arena vendors and their employees. We've also participated in the SEC basketball, NCAA tournaments, the NHL draft, NHL All-Stars playoff, Stanley Cup viewing parties. Coincidentally, we also leverage these assets to help Grand Prix in the downtown area as well, even though that is not under your purview. And we got our next one. So talking a little bit about the shuttle program, where it is now. It has changed significantly. We have 26 shuttles where we used to have 30 plus, so we have definitely downsized the fleet a little bit. We have 5 daytime routes with about 1,000 people using those. That's not on a daily basis, but because of flexible work schedules, you know, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we still have 1,000 patrons that are paying to use that shuttle service. We did have a reactivation of a private route in March, and we have one more private route that we are awaiting word on to be reactivated. Earlier I spoke about Beep being reactivated. That was on December 2nd. As I mentioned, it was for the ticket holders of Fred's events. Moving on to the next slide. Where are we going from here? What do we expect? We expect this year we will get close to that 600,000 patron trip range. We also are expecting a return of a large client in our 3Q this year. If they get anywhere close to where they were, that was about 1,000 people that used it on a daily basis. And as always, we have tried to evaluate and seek out evening and nighttime opportunities. So hotels that have cleaning staff that come in overnight or something like that. So we're always looking to accommodate people and help lessen the impact, the economic impact rather, of parking in the downtown area. So this really is just an overview for you. Happy to answer any questions. But I also wanted to thank you for the continued support. Our contract goes through May of 2024. But thank you very much, and I'll take any questions.
Questions?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
One question having to do with the soccer stadium.
Yes, sir.
Is there any way you can provide transportation there?
We were in initial discussions, but we have yet to solidify anything. So we would be happy to do something like that, but we just have not been, we're just not 100% at the table, as it were.
I personally think that it's definitely needed.
Yeah.
And I wish you success with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you, Russell, for that update.
Thank you very much.
This is a program that, as an authority, we support, and the partnership has been great, and we look forward to
All right.
continue.
Well, thank you so much.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have a question.
Sorry to hold you up, but based on the finance report, if there's an awful lot of activity going to be happening, renovation or rebuilding in the Titans Stadium area,
Sure.
what are your alternate plans?
Well, we have been asked what we would like to see in future construction if this program is to continue past 2024. At the end of the day, all of the contracts, one, can be canceled if they need to be moved. We'd obviously not like to do that, but secondarily, we will most likely leverage underparked parking assets within the area to relocate some of these people, which will be short-term contracts. We would like to have some space in the new facility area, or at least in their parking area. We worked with, in Atlanta, there was where I previously worked, we leveraged basically the same concept, but we had shuttles at an MTA station, so we would pick you up and drop you off, and it served a perimeter area. The same concept would be here. So if there's something that is relocated for our transportation program, not our MTA here, we would like to work with them to try and help get those folks out and about.
One last question, and then I'll hand it off to you. To continue operating at your current capacity, what's the minimum number of spaces that you would need access to?
At our current capacity, probably
Like the
about
600,000 passenger trips a year.
Yeah, that is including our BEEP events as well. So there's quite a bit of those. We're not sure whether or not we're going to continue to do it for all Bridgestone Arena events, but I would say about 2,500 spaces.
Thank you.
Just, Russell, on your pre-COVID numbers of downtown corporations that you serve, are those all back now? I know that
all
typical
of them.
downtown work schedules change,
Sure.
but are you still servicing all of those entities?
Not all of them. A few of them have moved out to different areas because of the economic impact. One of them has just returned, so that's positive for us. And then one of the larger ones, we're waiting to hear back from when their full return to work schedule is. So I think, as everybody is, they're fighting that battle of, do we require them to come back to work? Do we operate at a little bit less capacity? So it really just remains to be seen. But with the activation of the first new private, or the first existing private route, we have high hopes that the next one is going to fall fairly soon.
Thank you for the work you do.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank
you,
you all
Russ.
so much for your time. Have a
Thank you,
wonderful day.
authority members, for your questions and
Take care.
input. At this time, we'll entertain facility questions, which is the time that we set aside for our board members to have an opportunity to ask our facility partners or representatives questions. We have Bridgestone Arena, Nissan Stadium, and First Horizon Park. We'll hear from them next in their report. So any questions for any of our facility partners? If not, I'll invite Adam English, General Manager of the Nashville Sounds First Horizon Park, and Doug Scopel, VP of Operations and Assistant GM, to give us the Sounds report.
Hello. I wanted to give you guys, if some of you haven't made it out to the ballpark, but give you kind of an oversight of our season so far and some of the unique aspects of our stadium. First, the bandbox. This area is really unique in minor league baseball. We partner with Strategic Hospitality Group on that space. It's fun for families, for adults, really an entire area. We have our 9-hole mini golf course that is really entrenched in the community. Each course is designed by a different local artist. We have our Score 4, Papa Shot Connect 4, which is fun, and just ping pong and cornhole, really a place in the ballpark that appeals to both baseball fans and people who are just out here for entertainment. Some of our giveaways this year. We're doing a 5-part t-shirt jersey giveaway. We've given away Dansby Swanson. The one I'm most excited about, I'll talk a little bit about in our next upcoming slide, is we're utilizing a shirt in honor of Turkey Stearns, who is the only native-born Nashvilleian in the Baseball Hall of Fame, and played for the Detroit Monarchs of the Negro Leagues. And then some of the other giveaways, we're doing clear bag fanny packs. We gave away some of our boot steins there, and really wanted to take this opportunity to let you guys know about some of our strongest community initiatives. One of the things that we do every year is a pop-up baseball clinics. So part of our pop-up baseball clinic, we go to an elementary school under the impression of the kids that we're going to do an assembly. And what we do is our staff actually takes all the kids outside and we play baseball. The biggest surprise for them, we teach them the basics of the game, but the biggest surprise is that the elementary school actually gets to keep all of the equipment that we bring so that they can continue to play baseball. And here's a little video. Of course, boosters involved. As part of the Nashville Sounds Foundation, we give away scholarships as well. We give away $2,500 scholarships to students throughout Nashville that can work on continuing their further education. We actually focus most of these scholarships around diversity, equity, and inclusion as well. Some of our jersey auctions that we do to benefit local organizations. We became the final professional sports team to be inclusive of anxiety, sensory inclusive. So we did a sensory inclusive jersey that someone who suffers from some of these anxieties actually created as an artist. We are the first town in Nashville where all of our major sports teams are sensory inclusive. And then we're doing our Copa de la Diversion, where we turn into the Vihuelas de Nashville, which you'll see a slide on that. We're doing a Star Wars night. We're doing Margaritaville. So all of the benefits of those jersey auctions, which are unique for our fans and our team to wear, go back to local organizations. This is probably the initiative I'm most excited about for this year. This is supported from Major League Baseball, but something that we're going all in on. And this is an African-American Black fan initiative to engage the community around us. It's called the 9 because that's the number Jackie Robinson wore in his only year in the minor leagues. What we're going to do with this program is, part of that is the Turkey Stearns giveaway. His daughters are coming down we're paying for them to come down from Detroit for that game. They're actually both incredibly gifted vocally, and so they're going to sing the national anthem, which is very cool. I put together a board, a steering committee of community leaders to help make sure that we are hitting every mark with this program as we should. And this is something that we're going to do long term. We're working with Fisk, we're working with Tennessee State, American Baptist, Meharry, all of the HBCUs around us, with an executive training program that we're going to offer these kids an opportunity to come out, see what it's like to get experience working in sports. We're going to pay them for their time out here. And then, so there is that piece of it. There are going to be a number of community initiatives centered around refurbishing fields and exposing the game of baseball to people right in and around our ballpark to start, and then expanding out from there. And then lastly, during our giveaway, we're going to tell the story of some of the great African-American baseball players who've come through Nashville. We're on the site of Sulphur Dell. Many of them played here. And the unfortunate truth about that is that history wasn't well documented. We're working with a couple of local Nashville historians to tell that story. We're going to tell Turkey Stearns' story. One of the reasons that we're focusing on Turkey Stearns this year is a member of our committee is Dr. Harriet Kimbrough Patterson. And my initial thought was, we'll honor Henry Kimbrough. And she said one of the things that her father was adamant about was not only telling the story, but telling the story in the correct order. And without Turkey Stearns, there is no Henry Kimbrough. That's her words. And so we started doing the research. We found his daughters and put this together for this first year. And this is something we're going to continue to do year in and year out. And a part of the night where we're celebrating this, we're going to highlight Black-owned businesses. We're going to try to engage the community in and around us and make sure that our ballpark is welcome to all people. And they know that. And so I'm very excited about this initiative and look forward to seeing it come to life. We're certainly going to walk before we run, making sure that we're doing everything the right way. But one of the biggest things that I've not only told the steering committee, but our staff internally is behind all of this, there will be action and there will be goals achieved. So excited about that. Some of our other initiatives, we do camps out here, our Crossroads Camps. We actually just had one yesterday. Where we actually brought out kids who are hard of hearing, deaf, and teach them baseball. This is our Copa de la Diversion program, which was actually launched in minor league baseball about 2016, 2017, where we completely re-identify and engage with the Hispanic community around us. Minor league baseball historically has been one of the leaders in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space, and doing more than just having heritage nights, but actually embracing the cultures, trying to engage with these communities and find ways for them to feel welcome in our ballparks. I mentioned more skills camps. We've partnered with Play Like a Girl. We actually won a golden bobblehead for this, which is, I know it sounds funny, but it is actually the top prize for one of our community initiatives in 2019. I think that's it, right? All right. I am now going to bring up the buttery pipes of Jeff Hem, our broadcaster, to tell you all the fun stuff about our team. And there's a lot of good stuff to talk about.
Thank you.
Adam, you promised you were not going to use that phrase, buttery pipes. You owe me some money or something for that. Thank you for the opportunity to talk a little bit about the actual baseball component of the Sounds. As Adam showed you, we're proud as an organization of all the different reasons that someone would want to come to a ball game. And in the play-by-play world, our team this year is making my job incredibly easy. We're having basically one of the best seasons on the field that a Sounds team has had in some ways in years. The team is 26-11. which is the highest win total in all of minor league baseball, and the only big league team with more wins than that right now is the New York Yankees. So off to a pretty good start. The other thing is we play 6-game series, not 3 or 4 like a lot of baseball schedule formats. And our team has won every series that it has played this year, all 6 of them. And the record, the Sounds, as you know, have been around since 1978. So some of the records, if you try to get really specific to look something up, it's hard to find from the 70s and 80s. We know since at least 1987 that no Sounds team had started its season by winning 5 series in a row. This team has already won 6, and they've won the first 2 of our current series with the Reds AAA team, the Louisville Bats, who are in town right now. So pretty good start to the year. You know, most of a AAA roster consists of guys who've already been to the major leagues. They're just trying to get back there and stay there. But I want to highlight a couple of guys who have not yet gotten there but are knocking on the door. This on your screen is Ethan Small. Most of our guys, you know, they come from all over. Ethan is actually a Tennessee native. He was born in the Jackson area, went to Mississippi State. He was a first-round pick by our parent club Brewers in 2019, and he was our league's pitcher of the month in April. This is our shortstop, Bryce Terang. He was also a first-round pick by the Brewers in 2018 out of high school in California. So he's only 22 years old. He makes at least one wow play every night. He's having a terrific start to the season, and the Brewers named him their minor league offensive player of the month for the month of April, too. So Ethan and Bryce have gotten us off to a very good start. You know, if you've been around First Horizon Park, one of the things, and Adam touched on it with some of the historical context that the Sounds play in, this ballpark being on the grounds of the old Sulphur Dell. Well, our manager, Rick Sweet, and I think he joined you virtually for a meeting at some point last year. Rick's been managing at somewhere in the minor leagues since the late 80s, and he is currently 8th all-time in minor league managerial wins. Well, as it happens, entering tonight's game, he is 1 away from getting into a tie for 7th with a former Nashville Vols manager, Larry Gilbert. And Gilbert, that's a shot from some of the images we have of Larry around the stadium. The Sounds try to tell the story of all the different games and types of teams that played at the old Sulphur Dell. And the old minor league Nashville Vols were managed by Larry Gilbert for 10 years back in the late 30s to late 30s to late 40s. He managed for a long time, but 10 of those years were with the Vols. Larry is Nashville's all-time winningest manager of any sort of baseball in the city, and Rick may tie him. He's going to tie him at some point. It might even happen tonight with 2,127 wins for Rick, and Larry had 2,128 in his career, and just over 800 of those were as a Vols manager. So pretty cool that Rick's passing up some longtime baseball names and then the local connections. So we're certainly hoping it happens in this series. And then finally, you know, these guys are so talented. Even guys who never make it to the major leagues. You get to AAA, you've already been weeded out of several minor league levels just to get to AAA. These guys make terrific plays every night. Like I said, they make my job easy. Well, Tuesday night, we had kind of an all-timer. Our outfielder, Jonathan Davis, as you'll see in a second, made a catch that ended up as SportsCenter's #1 play for the night in their nightly top 10. So here's, as we call him, JD.
And #1 is from the minors, but it's major league. Nashville Sounds Louisville Bats. Juniel Karakuto with a fly ball, but Jonathan Davis with an incredible catch. Wow. Nashville wins 4-3 and Davis is #1.
If you follow us on the social media channels, we've got some slow-mo versions of the catch. And from my angle up on this level of the stadium, off the bat, I mean, I'm thinking this is a double in the gap for days. And Jonathan just made a tremendous catch, and he's the most humble guy. It was really cool that he got some of that attention and some interviews from it. And so they're making my job very easy on the field as they play, and appreciate the chance to share a little bit of the highlights of our team so far this year. Thanks a lot.
Thank you to Jeff, and I'm just happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Hey, Adam, I'll just go on record by saying thank you for the community engagement. Way to bring a community along with the sports team.
Thank you. We're doing our best, certainly.
Any other comments or questions? Just really excited. Congratulations on a wonderful season.
Thank you. And one thing I think I forgot to mention too, we're currently second in minor league baseball in attendance. We've had, this is the first year since 2019 we've actually played baseball during the month of April. And we've had some unique weather for April, but by all projections, we're going to have a big summer and hopefully we end up right on top where we were last year.
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I guess this concludes our agenda. I'd like to thank the members of the board, the Sports Authority staff, Metro Finance, Metro Legal, and our facility team representatives today. I'd be remiss not to thank our director, Aaron Mcgee, for a lovely interview. Thank you for that. We enjoyed it very much. Our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, June 16th at Nissan Stadium. Staff will be in touch regarding the need for a finance committee. Also, the personnel committee will need to meet in June for the annual evaluation of our executive director. And staff will be in touch with committee members to check availability as well on that. If there's no other business, I'll consider a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
That was a long one, too.
Well, it was. Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.